Hello, friends. This is Jennifer Bryant, and I'm the host of the Enough Mom podcast. You're listening to episode 105, Winning the Battle in Your Mind. Today, we're talking a little bit more about courage and motherhood, and I am welcoming my first guest onto the Enough Mom podcast, my good friend, Lisa Michelle Jones. She is joining us today to talk about courage, which is the first pillar of the Enough Mom framework. Lisa is an exercise physiologist. She's a health and fitness coach, Bible teacher, and founder of Fit by Design. Lisa is a homeschool mama of 3 who lives on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and she brings incredible wisdom about taking thoughts captive, confronting limiting beliefs, and choosing courage just one moment at a time. Wait until you hear Lisa's kayak race story. It is hilarious. It is surprising, and it's packed with truth about not quitting even when everything feels impossible. I have such a great time talking with Lisa. She's been a sweet friend that I've met over the internets, actually. We've been in writers groups together, and we've been to speaking conferences together, and she is just a hoot and a half to hang out with. So I know that you'll enjoy my conversation with Lisa Michelle. This is our first episode of 3, actually. She joins me to talk about courage, confidence, and calling. Unfortunately, this very first episode was recorded originally on Zoom before I connected to a different program, and I lost the video. So you get to listen to us even if you're watching me on YouTube right now. I'm putting a placeholder on our YouTube channel, but you'll still get to hear her. Our second and third episodes that we recorded together, you will get to see us interact. So please stay tuned for episode 106, again, with Lisa Michelle Jones. So with that said, let's jump into our episode. Enjoy. Hey, Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Well, today you're going to dive in with me to the new version of what I've been doing lately. The Enough Mom podcast is new, and you get to be on with me, and I'm so excited to start welcoming guests back again.
Yes, I am so excited for this new season for you and all that it has in store.
It's been a season. I went on sabbatical for an intended 3 months, and it ended up being 3 years. Lots of stuff happened around just after COVID time. I think I was thrown into this whole new identity shift for myself, and I had to make some decisions for my mental clarity and my friendships and my kids became teenagers overnight. So weird. So how has your home life been?
Oh gosh, so weird is such a good way to describe it, especially as they come into the teen years, right? Because we have a house full of teens right now, and my daughter is out of the house, so I have 3 teen boys and my husband. So there's lots of masculinity and the teenage years, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of energy. It really is. But yeah, also weird is a good word. I love that you took that mental break. That's so wise and so needed. And, we all go through seasons and they change and they shift. Use the word shift. And I think it's smart for us to recognize when we're shifting and not to resist it, but to, embrace it and see what's in store, right? So I love that.
Right, exactly. Which is exactly why I felt the need to shift. It was a major shift between what I had originally done with Practical Family and what I now want to offer mothers specifically, but really a lot of these concepts that we're going to talk about today can be applied to most women. We're here to help each other and encourage each other to grow and to overcome hard things. And I think that our voices have got to just be used, and we need our to share our stories. And when I say that to anyone listening too, if you have ever felt like you can't share your hard story because, oh, someone else has it worse, or of course someone else has it worse, there's always someone else who has it worse. But you know what? We're here and we have to be here for each other in the time and place that we are. And you never know who it's going to help to actually use your words and share. So today we're talking
Mhm.
about courage or winning the battle in your mind. What does
Mhm.
that mean for you particularly, Lisa? How do you find that you need to fight and be more courageous in your mind?
Yeah, well, it's interesting whenever I think about the way that that question is framed and the word winning. Because I feel like I've been fighting that battle for my whole life, and that it's a daily battle. That's, and really, I mean, Paul tells us that it will be a daily battle, that we'll have to die daily, because it has to do with, the war between our, our flesh and fleshly desires and our spirit, and all the things that we take in on a daily basis, on a moment to moment, and then the stories we tell ourselves. And so yeah, so I feel like I've walked that journey in great detail, and sometimes I've done it well, and sometimes I have not done it well.
No, yeah, I get you. Courage, winning the battle in your mind. But you're talking about like what it feels like to be victorious, right? And how to have small victories and when life feels hard. Can you think of a time that maybe whether it's long ago or recent that some kind of win you had that helped you to be more courageous?
I think what it made me think of was, when I think of winning, I'm a runner, and I think of crossing the finish line. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, what I was saying, is that we're not going to cross the finish line until we get to, like, we're not going to have an ever have a place where we've arrived. And we hear that a lot about, it's more about the journey, and it is. And I think that so many times one of the lies that we believe within ourselves is that we should arrive, or that we should be able to figure this out, and that it shouldn't be a series of daily choices. And sometimes for me, like moment by moment choices. So you asked me, what was a recent moment that I've, won on the battlefield of my mind. And I would say that it's about that realization, about the fact that it is the small victories. And I think one of the most crucial things for me is knowing what it is that I'm thinking, like doing a thought inventory and asking myself, like stopping and pausing. And so the Bible talks about this idea of taking our thoughts captive. And so many times I think we want to just race right by that verse and say, oh, okay, well, take our thoughts captive. But when we stop and think about what that actually means, like, what does it mean to captivate something? You're capturing it. And so that implies that we have to stop, we have to pause, we have to think, what is it that we're actually thinking about? And in today's world, you know, it's it goes so fast. Like, everything is moving so fast, everything is so loud. I think it's an intentional posture of making ourselves pause and think about those things.
Right, right. And my personal example is actually what we want to talk about next in terms of creating our habits, because our habits form our identity. But
Mm.
stopping to actually notice what we're thinking and what we're believing so that our habits can be formed is so important. I mean, I first learned this when it came to communicating with my husband, right? And not believing, like practicing believing that my first thought about something he said or a look that he gave that I would have taken too personally in the past, or oh, he meant this when he said this or looked at me this way. I'm taking those thoughts captive and asking myself, okay, is that true of what I know of him, with the conversations we've had in the past? Am I just superimposing something onto what I want to believe so I can feel justified right now? And then most recently, my own thought habits have been like, okay, I need to make better decisions about the way that I'm eating, the time of day that I'm eating, because I need to get a better handle on my health and my physical body and everything, right? And we're talking about this the other day off camera, just about how different, nutritional choices, right? If we want to form habits, we have to capture our thought in the moment and like, am I actually hungry or am I kind of just bored right now? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, how do we break this repeated negative self-talk, like I'm not enough, which is what my whole new brand is based on. I don't feel like I'm enough because I am not winning at what I wanted to win at. I'm being defeated. I'm losing the race. I'm not sticking to my plan.
Mm,
And we get so self-deprecating instead of
mm.
just taking the small win. I chose water instead of soda today. That's a small win. I believe the best about what my husband said to me. That's a small win because I didn't
Yeah,
let it be continue.
it's so true. I'm racing over here writing notes about what you're saying, because I'm like, oh, there were so many good things that. So whenever you were talking about that true of him? So you're in this conversation with your husband, you're asking yourself, is that true of him? And I love that because I like to say, well, I know your heart, and I know that, that wouldn't be your intention, even though maybe it came out that way, or, and so I really love that you said, is that true of him? That's so huge because it is more about the identity of the person, and not just the circumstantial or, the things that can change from moment to moment. And so you said also like what I know about him. That was really good. But the negative self-talk, oh my gosh. Yeah, we could probably have an entire episode about that. Yeah, you're laughing. Gosh, that has been, something I have had to wrangle with for as long as I can remember. So, in terms of an example, kind of like you just gave with your husband, with my children, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I know you talk to a lot of moms, and I feel like the whole idea of this personal offense, like do you get personally offended by like, the disrespect or the way that they respond to us and things, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, I had to really work with myself to not put it through that framework of personal offense. And my husband will say, help me to reframe it. Like, think about, their age and, how are they mentally processing that? And then embarrassingly, he'll say to me too, like, well, how do you expect to get through that situation if you're acting just like them? Well, ouch. But it's so true,
It is
you
it
know.
is absolutely true. I couldn't believe how offended I could let myself become by my teenage daughter. My son is 15, going on 15, daughter's going on 16. And I love how independent they're becoming. And they're also becoming independent with their words. And they want to not be babied. And I get that. I get that. I understand mutual respect. But every day, I feel like I learn a different micro lesson on what it needs to look like to have mutual respect with my children that I raised from the womb. It's
Mm.
such a mindset shift for me, and I had to tell myself that, like, Jen, kids are going to be kids. They are growing and learning, and you need to be the leader. You need to model what it looks like for them, and kids don't need you to argue back and forth with them. It's the power struggle or the super passive, I'm not saying this right, super passivity, right? Or being
Oh,
really
yeah.
not, just giving in or not wanting to have an argument or whatever. But what I find that my kids need the most is the strength that it takes me to calmly answer them like, no, I I know what's going on, or can you please say that to me differently? Or that was kind of hurtful. Did you mean to say it that way? And
Mm.
I feel like I'm even sounding snarky right now in the way that I'm saying it, but I have to
No.
snark and like, child, okay, no, you're not a child, you're a young adult, you're growing, you're like, okay, Jen, don't be condescending, don't be condescending, don't fight fire with fire. And often it takes me taking a deep breath and in those few seconds reminding myself what you're saying or what your husband has to remind you of sometimes. It's like
Hmm.
it is the truth. And we need, right, either our partner or our better sense to come over us, to wash over us in that moment and remind us what the truth is. My kids need more. They need me to show them, to model for them what a good response looks like. But I feel you.
Mm.
Yeah, I have to fight offense often with teenagers for sure.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I know. It's definitely been an up and down battle. And I love that how you were saying that they need to see our strength in that and our composure. And we're showing them, like you were saying, by example and leading them with this, like, how do we handle our emotions? And I think our emotions are often like a thermostat, right? And so we can control like the temperature and the range of this argument by us reigning in that composure, like you're talking about, and setting that example and showing them how to control it. But something you said made me think of this principle I always talk about called PPP, and it stands for pause, ponder, and pray.
Mm.
And you can do that in a very short moment. If you're from our generation, there was that song, you down with OPP, but if you remember, so I have, for whatever reason, I always hear that tune and I say, "Are you down with PPP?" in my head. So old school 90s song, but that's what I tell myself. And it means to pause, to ponder, and to pray. And I think every mom needs to ask themselves, like that question, right? Because yeah, it's so important. And this other idea that I've struggled with in that same vein is my kids will even say it to me, Mom, not everything is about you. That's what that offense is. It's about me. And I'm turning this whole situation inward when they're going through this. We're talking about teens and preteens here, you know, all of these emotional struggles and trying to figure out their identity and the things that the very things we're talking about here that we're trying to untangle in our adult life that they are begging us to help them to figure out now. We have the opportunity to give them this great foundation. And so I do think that it is strategic for us to tell ourselves, okay, this is not about me, because that's where offense takes us. And how can it be about us? I remember one time, I feel like I'm going to butcher it, but this visual picture that I heard from someone about talking about something that might lead to an argument. So you're talking about an issue and you imagine like two people sitting at a table across from each other. And this visual of like the issue is here in the middle. It's not with you, it's not with me. Here it is, in between us. And let's figure out, how we're going to work as a team to sort it out. And often I'll say to my children, like, our last name is Jones, like we're Team Jones. We're on the same team, and the Bible talks about we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but by principalities of a dark world. And I know that may sound like a super spiritual, thing to say, but it is true. And so to bring that into the conversation and say, hey, like there is an enemy in this world that wants us to feel like we're on separate teams, but we're not. We're on the same team tackling this issue, not battling each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are on the same team. What was it? Something you said reminded me of, well, I'll share this concept first, and maybe if I remember the other thing, I'll go back. The ability to model our strength to them, not for the sake of power over them, right? We're not trying to be super authoritarian or whatever, but
Right.
it's what Jesus modeled in his meekness. Meekness has always fascinated me as a word, because meekness means power under control. And if we can show anything to our kids in that we don't need to prove ourselves as, or remind them, look, I'm your parent, do what I say because I said so, kind of stuff. It's not meaningful and it's not connective. It's actually very disconnective to try to, get them to fall in line, especially as growing teenagers who are trying to take on an identity as adults, right? Like we can lose so much of who we are just by keeping things personal, holding it too close to ourselves instead of doing what you were describing in your analogy, where we're taking the issue and we're moving it out of ourselves and looking at it. I'm going forward if you're watching me on video right now, but like even to the side and you're talking with your team this way, the thing is out here in front of us. Like you're saying, it's in the middle and we're dealing with it. We're looking at the thing instead of letting each other be identified by the thing. Or like I could think, oh, you're being super rude, you're super ungrateful. And they could look at me in the same way. And oh, it's when you said, Lisa, when your child says to you, Mom, not everything's about you. I'm like, that's funny. I was gonna say the same thing to you. But even the way you mean it in that context, like, okay, I have got to just choose humility right now and say, oh, this thing is not about me. What if this issue is not about me? And then I got to model what it looks like to go through, okay, I'm actively choosing not to be offended, not to let your arrows hit me that way, not because I'm impenetrable, but because it's not really about the feelings. The feelings are being generated because there's a deeper issue of disrespect or confusion, or something feels unfair, something feels off. And we get to work through that right now. And I tell you what, the sooner I would have learned that about how to work through things in marriage, I think my husband and I wouldn't have come to a hard spot at year 10, year 12, year 14. And now almost 19 years married and like finally communicating like adults. It's crazy.
Wow, I really relate to that. And we just celebrated 20 years this year. Yeah. So, and yeah, it's really so true. And something you were talking about made me think of the concept of servant leadership. And I know you and I have talked a lot off camera about leadership and how as moms, we're leaders in our home, we're leaders with our children, and leadership by definition is just influence, and you have influence in your life over people. And so this idea that you were talking about meekness, I love that so much because servant leadership is the best leadership. It's whenever we put it in the framework of how can I serve the other person in this situation, then we can really get somewhere whenever we're trying to solve anything. And then you also just mentioned actively choosing. And in my experience, like this, our topic here is courage. And if we want to get to courage, what that involves is a whole litany of choosing things like trusting over trying to control everything in our life. Now, that's just for starters, but to me, that's the foundation. So I'll stop right there.
Yes. Oh, yes, Lisa. We are going to talk a whole lot more about leadership for sure. And it surprises me. It surprised me, but it doesn't. But I want to really get to the bottom of when I speak with moms about you're a leader. We need to teach our children, leadership skills and qualities, but the ones who shrink back are the ones who don't feel like they have much control in their lives, or it's just been easier to toe the line to say to stronger people in their lives. And I get, again, I mean, I keep using the word respect, but it's a whole other. I need a, word definition wheel right now. I need to type. I go, okay, respect can encompass so many types of things and types of responses, right? But I feel like it's the women who have never felt good enough to be heard. And so what do they default to? What do you think? Women who are not, don't feel like natural leaders, what do you think they default to?
So what do they default to as far as who they think that they are if they don't think that they're a leader?
Hmm.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not a
Gosh.
leader, what kind of, how do you move in this world if you're
Well, and I think just like you said, it's very common. And I feel like that's a really loaded question, but a great loaded question, that should be unpacked. So, and I don't think there's any one simple answer, but I think it comes down to something that we've talked about, like the things that we believe, asking ourselves this question again, like, why do we believe the things that we believe? So culturally, what have we seen? Maybe what have we seen in the family that we have grown up in? What do we think, who do we think a mom is and what roles does she play? And then who do we think a wife is and what roles does she play? And who told us that? Was it culture? Was it our parents? Was it our family? And is that truth? And we have a standard of truth that we can line that up to. And the Bible talks about lots of women that were leaders.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I really think it's so individualized, but I do think that there's some common things out there for sure. And I think that you're onto something whenever you said that when there's strong leaders around them. I know for me, like I will sometimes take the back seat if there's a stronger leader that is, for instance, like in personality types. Okay. I tend to have the struggle with focus, very scattered personality, that's not super organized. And so if I'm working with a person like that, I will yield to them for their leadership in that. However, if I'm working with a bunch of people like me, I will rise up and I will figure it out, and I'll have a completely different countenance to where I've been told in work environments that people didn't think I had a personality. And I'm like, well, that's because there's I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but so I think my point is that we will often default to different things based on what we believe the strengths are around us. So if in our house, if our husband is a really strong leader, maybe we don't feel like there's a place or a position for us to be a leader.
Sure, sure. Okay, first I have to apologize, Lisa, because the way that I asked that question, I feel like I put you on the spot, and I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Whoever's listening, like I hate when and I just did it. One of the things that annoy when adults ask questions that they already have the answer to, it makes you feel like, oh my gosh, is there a right or wrong answer? And I think, I could have asked that better. But what I was thinking was that when women don't believe that they're a natural leader, then they're automatically going to become a follower or a doer. And I see this a lot in women who, uh, and I believe them when they say, no, I'm happy just doing the thing, or I'm happy just being a homemaker. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's
Sure.
just that if we choose to default to one, characteristic, I'm afraid that women will lose themselves and their identities in only just defaulting to people who have better, stronger skills, and then they don't seek out the things that give them strength. So I don't wish upon anyone that they would just always seek to be in the background, although I think that's where a lot of women tend to end up. Nor do I think that everyone needs to be in the limelight. There doesn't need to be that dichotomy, but every one of us has something that we can share with the world, that we can pass on to
Absolutely.
our kids. And I'm talking about the strengths and leadership that lead to passing on wonderful traits and character qualities to your children. If you're not leading a group of anyone else, that's fine. I was never that person until I really believe that God showed me that, Jen, you're meant for more than just this. I knew I didn't always want to be a classroom teacher, although I loved my years in the classroom, but I knew that every step that I was led through, I had the choice to believe a lie or to challenge myself with truth, even though I'd have to take more risks to do it. So I wonder
Yes.
that if women feel that they can't get past a certain point, that they're just resolved that, well, I'm just not that kind of person. And I'm totally on board
Hmm.
with you, Lisa, about personalities. I can talk about personalities all day long because it's one of the things that allowed me to jump out of my shell and go, oh, that's probably why I do the things that I do. Or I am unique in this way. She is unique in that way. Oh my gosh, my mom is like this. Therefore, I can accept her for where she is. My sister functions this way in the world, So there's a lot to be said for just trying to learn about and accept who you are, where you are, instead of believing the lies that you need to do it all just like that lady does it, or just like that Pinterest person has it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And so as soon as you went there, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And I didn't realize that that's where you were going with it, but I wish I would have because I could talk about personalities all day too. But what you just said is so important to pause there because this whole concept of just a mom, I think that that is a predominant theme of a struggle, right? That so many women struggle with. And if you believe you're just a mom. Like the root of that is a lie, period. No one is just a mom because of everything that you just said. So what the picture that I was thinking in my head, I've never thought this before. And so whenever you were talking, I thought of the scripture that says how he knit us together in his mother's womb. And so he didn't, I don't know anything about knitting. Okay. I can't even sew a button. So I don't know what I'm talking about here. Okay. As far from a sewing crafty perspective, because that is not me. However, I just imagine if you're knitting, it's so intricate and it's so detailed and it's woven together with all these different things, and nothing in there is just in anything, and so you're certainly not just a mom. You've been knit together with this unique divine design, as I like to call it, of things like your personality that we were just talking about, like your spiritual gifts and and a calling. And these gifts are specifically designed in you for such a time as this, at this exact point in eternity, in the family that you're in, and the situations that you're in. And of course, those change with seasons. But I believe that when, whenever we can really I don't want to say figure that out, but get outside of that box. Because if we stay in any, like earlier, you were saying how important it is for our husbands to show us the things that we were talking about earlier, like the offense with our kids. And so I always talk about that is someone showing you you're inside the picture frame, right? So you're in a picture, if you imagine it, you cannot see outside the picture. Well, that person is outside of your frame, your framework or your picture or whatever, and they're showing you or blind spots in a car, whichever analogy works best for you. And so if you believe that your identity is just in anything, you're going to stay inside that box. You're going to stay inside that picture frame. And so I think the important thing is to go outside those boundaries and figure out, what is my design? What is my calling? What are my unique things? And there's so many different tools out there.
Hey there, friend. Can I take just a moment to share something from my heart? If you've been listening to Enough Mom and finding encouragement here, if these conversations have been speaking to you in some way, I'd be so grateful if you hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. And here's the thing, when you share an episode with a friend who might need to hear it, you're extending that encouragement even further. You're saying you're not alone to another mom who might be struggling. And that means the world. Now, I want to be really honest with you about what it takes to keep this show going. Running a podcast, even a listener supported one like this, takes time, energy, and resources. There's equipment, there's editing, there's software, hosting fees, and countless hours of preparation to make sure that what you're hearing is worth your precious time. If Enough Mom has blessed you, if that's reminded you that you are enough, would you consider supporting this show? Even the cost of a coffee on Ko-Fi helps keep these conversations going. You can find the link in the show notes. And you know what? Whether you can give or not, I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you for showing up, for listening, and for being part of this community of Enough Moms. Now, let's get back to our conversation. One thing that we kind of outlined here to talk about today are the cultural cliches and the pressures of perfection, like people talking about the mom guilt, and so speaking of something to get out of, a box to get out of, well, I was thinking, why is it that I stay in mom guilt at certain times, and why at other times am I ready not to believe that, right? A lot of times it's just because I'm tired. I feel like I am super affected by the temperature in my house. It's kind of hot
Yes.
here. The days that I don't get much done or much done that I expect myself to get done, the guilt comes on when I'm just like, wow, I was not feeling it today, or it was too hot today. And then the lies of, oh, that's a dumb excuse, Jen. Come on, get over yourself and do something. That's just another negative thought. It's like floating by on the river in my mind, and I have to watch it go by and say to it, okay, I'm not going to fish you out of the river right now. I'm not going to live in that or believe you. I'm going to either say, I'm laying down because I need rest and I'm owning that. Or, you know what? I'm going to get up and get this one thing done, and that'll be enough. That'll be enough for today.
Yes.
And that's part of
Yes.
the message too, is just that how much is enough? How much it, until you're worthy of your calling, and that's what I talk about in Enough Mom. Have the courage to be confident in your calling. Courage starts with doing hard things, but having more specifically having strength in the face of difficulty. So okay, if it's difficult to get all the things done that are on my list, then maybe I gave myself too big of a list. Maybe I need coffee, and maybe I do need a nap so that I can tackle more later. But it's finding the strength to even just have your own personal resolve in the moment, to choose out of your own brain and decision making, and not based on lies, right? Not based on the guilt that wants to tear us down. It's like, no, I'm actively making this decision, and I'm going to actively experience the effects of it later, whether it's the consequences of, oh, well, didn't get all my list done I wanted to, so how do I get to make this right tomorrow, right? We all have the opportunity to reconcile things, to reconcile our to-dos, our relationships, commitments to things, right? And it's our choice, and the power of our choice can either empower us or make us feel defeated, to be our own worst enemy. I mean, it
Yeah,
does that way.
so true. That was a Pinterest quote there, what you just said. We need to pull that out. The power. Now I can't repeat it,
I don't
but it
remember.
was really good. Yeah. So I said it so you could put a little marker there and get that quote, girl. That was a good quote. So whatever Jen just said, rewind and write that down. That was really good because I'm going to do the same thing. But it's so true. If we don't grab, because I I know I can tell at my negative ways I'm responding. So I relate to what you said so much because I am the queen of if I don't get enough done on my to-do list, if I wasn't efficient enough, productive enough, checked enough things off, well, I am dealing with this monster inside of myself and my head, at the end of the day. And hopefully that doesn't come out in my responses. But if I'm honest, a lot of times it does. And then I have to stop myself and say, okay, what a lie right now do I have on like this repeat cycle? And oh, look, I just did the crazy sign. Okay, so if you're watching, I just did what the kids do for loco. Yes, that's what it makes you. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. And that's what we're doing with the thoughts on repeat in our head. From what I have seen in my life is that typically we all have like this thread I like to talk about where it's usually rooted somewhere in childhood where there's an insecurity that just like we're talking about. So maybe it's for us, we don't feel like we ever get enough done. You talked about that enough line. I talk about how it it it's this line that how do I say it? The enough line is forever moving. You can't ever reach it. It's not a finish line that you can cross. It is a facade. It's like a mirage in the desert. You will never reach it because, it just keeps getting bigger and more impossible because it's not realistic. It's based on, like I'm talking about, this thread in our life. So what happens is these lies start to pull this thread through our life and every little thing, pokes at it. So it's like these situations arise, almost like testing us. So this thread that comes through, it's like this thread of insecurity, right? That ends up being pulled. I mean, nobody can see it, but it gets pulled through our life. I know I talk with my hands a lot. So yeah, yeah. I know I'm like, they can't see you, Lisa, if they're just listening to the podcast. But really, it's like there's all these opportunities for it to come up again. And so for me, it's the exact thing that you mentioned, the inefficiency, I never get enough done. It's never enough and I never have enough time. Well, interestingly enough, and I know we're probably going to go there because I think it's somewhere in our outline, so I don't want to jump ahead, but it's it's so much about the words that we speak. So I found that if I say that I don't have enough time, well, guess what? I'm not going to have enough of time because of the principle. It's like Pareto or something, or uh, no, Parkinson. I think it's the Parkinson principle. The task at hand will expand to fill the amount of time available. And so I have felt like that law, that principle that's at work in our universe is like my arch nemesis. But it's because of my belief system. It's because of these lies that I have believed. It's because of this insecurity thread that I've been, pulling through my whole life. And it resurfaces. And so I like to always tell this story. It's from in print in a book. I can't even think of. Oh wait, look, it's right here. It's called God's Creative Power by Charles Capps, and he gives this illustration, and it's about the power of our words, and it's about this lady, and it was printed in a newspaper, like I don't know, the 1920s or something, long, long time ago. But these doctors, they did this write up about this lady who had a chronic fever and they could not figure out what was wrong with this lady. And she, kept coming back to them for help. This is a true story. And they ran all kinds of series of tests, troubleshoot, tried all these things, and her fever would not go away. And it was chronic. I mean, I don't even know how for how long. And so this one time she comes in and they said, well, we're going to put you through a series of questioning because we're going to, just try and dig until we find out, something, a lead, I guess. And so during this questioning, they asked her, what do you say to your kids whenever they upset you? And one of the things that she said is, well, that just burns me up. That's what she would say to her kids. And they said, well, and this is not a joke, this is for real. They said, well, you know, we don't know if it'll matter or not, but let's try changing that verbiage and see if it makes a difference. Well, sure enough, Jen, she stopped saying that as a response to her kids, and her fever went away.
Whoa.
The power of our words in our
Oh,
life. And the Bible backs that up. It says it's true. Those were not Christian doctors. That was, science. So there you go. Science and the Bible confirming.
that's the Proverbs 23:7 verse that you shared here. As a man thinks in his heart, so he is. So
That's
is
right.
and that I think proverb possibly had more to do with like, words lead to your beliefs, lead to your actions, right? But that gives a whole another literal meaning to burning up with fever because I kept saying it to myself. Is that manifestation or no? I don't know.
Right, right. Well, okay. And so practical, super practical example. So when I read that, this is what the Lord did for me. When I read that, I went, oh my gosh, this is why I'm always late. Okay. So full disclosure, I used to be so late. I mean, not like late, like later than you've ever seen anybody be late. Okay. Not way past the fashionable late. Okay. And so I know, so embarrassing to say, like I would sometimes be an hour and a half late to things like crazy. Yeah. And so it took me a long time to shave it down to just like a normal late. But guess what I told myself? I had all this anxiety surrounding this insecurity and this embarrassment of being known for being the person that was late all the time. That when I was getting ready to go somewhere, I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to be late. I don't want to be late. I was speaking that over myself on repeat. I don't want to be late. Well, guess what? I was late. And so I started saying, I want to be early. I want to be early. And I changed the framework and it worked. Now, yeah, I'm still late sometimes, but it's not, and it's like the normal, maybe 5 or 10 minutes because life happens. It's not a chronic issue and, all the time. So
Wow. Mindset shifts. They're powerful. Powerful.
for sure.
Powerful things. So choose the next place that we can take this conversation about courage and winning the battle in your mind, how much our words matter, defeating the cultural lies that we tend to believe. Let's talk about what it could look like to choose trust over control. So why do we keep choosing things that don't serve us, Lisa? Why do we keep choosing those things?
Right. I know. The $1 million.
Love being late. I mean, there are negative ramifications to choosing something over and over and it's still not working for us. So why do we keep choosing those things?
Yeah, I feel it's the $1 million question. And it's because it becomes a part of our identity. And so the root issue is who is it that we actually believe that we are? Our friend Lori Young, who is an amazing coach, she talks about this concept of like all systems check. And so she'll ask herself, what am I feeling right now? I don't know how she says it, but like, it's like this head, heart, body type of check, And so, like what is it that and we talked about this, like asking ourselves, why do we believe what we believe? What is it that we're thinking, doing a thinking inventory. So, so we're doing like this all systems check and we're asking ourselves these questions because the root of it is our identity. So we're acting, I think it's Craig Rochelle that says, you do what you do because of what you think of you.
Mm-hmm.
Full stop. And so you have to get to the root of what is it that you think of you. So bringing it home, because we want to tie this concept together of, we're talking about courage today, and you just asked me, what does it mean, to choose trust over control? Because I believe that choosing trust over control is the avenue of how do we get to being courageous? Because it's great to talk about courage, but many times it's like this elusive word that we don't really know how to get there. Yeah, we all want to be courageous. The Bible commands us to be courageous, but how do we actually do it? So, okay, so you and I are both homeschool moms, so we're going to have a little grammar lesson here. So, obviously, our kids are teenagers. We don't do this little rap anymore, but we used to do this little rap about verbs. So, a verb is a word, is an action word. And so that's how we would remember our verbs, right? I know when you're smiling, you don't rap too well. So that didn't really sound like rap, but you get the point. And so a verb is an action word. So I would ask my kids, they would say, oh, well, whatever, this is a verb. And I'd say, well, then show me, act it out. Show me how you do that thing. Well, I can't. Love, I can't. Okay, well, then it's not a verb. And wait, is love a verb? That was a horrible example. That could be both, right?
There have been poems and songs written about love being a verb.
Yeah. Okay, scratch that.
No, because it can be used in those contexts, but not necessarily like it's more of like a poet. Anyway, I'm a teacher, obviously.
Yes, you are. I love it. I love it. Okay, yes, and we should do a deep dive there later for sure because I just almost messed up my point. But, it'll be funnier anyway. Um, okay, but so if they cannot show me the action of that word, then it's not a verb. So then I say to you, show me how you faith. Well, you can't because faith is a noun, but in the Greek or the Hebrew, I can't remember which one, I'm not a theologian, you may know, faith and trust are the same exact word. Okay, so trust is the verb form of faith. So, how do we actually have faith, which leads to courage? It's by trusting. And it's by letting go of that need to control because control is elusive anyway. We cannot control most things, and most things that we fear and have anxiety around and all of these things are never going to happen anyway. That's why the famous acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real. So we want to have this daily, or forget daily. I just have stopped saying daily, like moment by moment, hour by hour practice of letting go of these things we can't control. And so and if we're going to change our identity, that's what it takes. So it's like, okay, well, am I actually trusting in this situation? So let's pull back and ask ourselves that question. Am I trying to control this? Can I control this? You know?
Oh, I love that, Lisa. That is so good. So good. And it helps us to fight I believe that we stay comfortable because we stay familiar, right? And if we're only ever swimming in the pool of familiarity and actually wanting to be free, but not wanting to take the steps to trust and have faith in a different process that could bring a different result, we need to be able to do that as moms. Like I think I brought it up at the beginning of this episode, but just like my whole journey with food and nutrition and exercise and all this, it's like if I want something different, I've got to do something different, you know? And I tried a little micro experiment. I'll tell you, I don't know if I mentioned this to you the other day, but I stopped biting my nails this year. And I'm 41
Nice.
years old. I am 41 years old, and I have always been a nail biter. And it was always my whatever coping mechanism for stress or anxiety or whatever. And I had to tell myself, I don't want to be a person who bites my nails. In fact, I want to be a person, a woman with pretty nails. That's what I want. And I have pretty nails, Lisa. Finally,
Yes, you do. Look at them. I'm a witness. I actually noticed them before we were even recording earlier. Yes.
but if you have ever been a nail biter, you know what a big deal this is. So, I mean, I'm going to trust that whoever's listening, I'm going to trust that you're going to suspend judgment right now. And the people who know what a big deal this is to break this type of habit over 4 decades of your life is huge. And it has so much to do with deciding the type of person I want to be. And every time I go to put my fingers toward my mouth, and sometimes you just don't think about it, but I think that's a testament to the power of being able to control your thoughts for the better. And so I took that into my nutrition journey. I took that thought practice into that journey because I'm like, I have got to just start trusting that I can change these things. And of course I pray. I'm like, Lord, I need help with this. Lord, I feel weak right now. Lord, I'm stressed. Whatever is the trigger point to get you to act in the old way, just know that it doesn't have to be that anymore. It doesn't have to. And even if you mess up and chew them off again, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that you failed. I thank God I haven't done that yet, but my nails have broken. They're brittle, and which just means I just have to sit down and spend time filing them down so they don't rip more. I have to take polish off and repaint them and take better care of my hands like I never had did before. And just like with the nutrition stuff, I have to take better care of my body, which starts in my thought life, which turns into belief, which turns into action. And these are only a couple of the small areas of my life that I've been able to feel like I'm winning. And nobody is everything all the time. There are plenty of other things in terms of time management. I struggle with the to-do list thing too, but also we're talking about this today, building up the courage and winning the battle in our minds, because there are small battles and there are big battles. So what are we going to turn our attention to next? And we all have to just reprioritize that, and not get stuck in this cycle of fear and control, even with ourselves,
Yeah. Oh, so true. And it's a cycle. And so I love that you went to habit because it was so perfect for what we were talking about. And then you said this idea of small versus big, but it really, our habits and our life is a culmination of all the small things. And so I fully believe that when we can master those small little things like the nails, okay, I don't have nails, but I don't bite them, but I don't have nails. I peel them. So maybe I should do what you did, Jen. Yeah, but it's a culmination of that. It's like, the guy that talks about making his bed. I grew up with a military father. I start making my bed as my feet hit the floor. It's one of the first things I do. I make my bed, I put on my shoes, but it's a culmination of those type of things. And you said something so important there. You said I had to ask myself, or I had to tell myself, I want to be a person who has pretty nails. You were saying this identity statement to yourself over and over and over. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. So we're going back to this, like, why do I keep going back to being a mom who struggles with perfection issues, who struggles with comparison, who struggles with feeling like I'm not enough? Well, it's because of again of an identity beliefs. So you have to write and believe and speak over yourself these new identity statements, just like you did. I want to be a person who XYZ, but don't stop with just like thinking about that once. I mean, if you look at this research study that they did with Harvard University, they followed like this graduating class of, do you know this story of writing down their goals? Okay, so they went and asked like how many of them had written goals, and it was a pretty large percentage of the people that had goals. But those that wrote them down were a pretty small percentage, and they followed them. And this 3% of people that wrote down their goals perform it was like some crazy percentage higher than the entire rest of the graduating class from Harvard University combined. Okay, so we think it was an elite group of people. 3% that wrote down their goals performed like I don't even know, it was a massive amount times more in every area of life because they had written goals. So what I'm telling you here is this idea of like affirmation statements, identity statements. So take the time to actually come up with the I want to be a person who has pretty nails. I don't think nothing is too small, really, because those are the building blocks of the life that we want. And then write those down as affirmation statements and put them where you can see them every day until you know them by memory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder how much if we avoid that practice so that we don't have to follow through, so that we don't have to possibly fail at not following through. Because I think of the other side of that, like, gosh, if I say that, then I have to be that. Or I might, it's easier just to say, no, this is just me. I'm content with who I am right now. That is totally your prerogative. You can do that. But the difference is if you're in a place where you feel stuck and you want to change, then that requires that you do something different, right?
Mm.
So we're not talking, I don't imagine you're listening to this podcast even this far to be like, no, I'm cool. I'm fine where I am. You're listening to two moms talk about, the struggles around this, and that it is hard. It's not an easy thing, but it's
Mhm.
possible to overcome those little vices, especially if they're rooted in fear or guilt or anything that is not from God. We don't have to live that way. We can find the courage to live confident in our calling. And that's what we talk about here at Enough Mom. So fear can masquerade as control, but trusting in God can bring us courage, to that place of courage. So can you share your example, Lisa, your kayaking story and the whole thing about missing the rudder?
Oh my gosh, so funny. I guess I forgot that I told you about that. So I guess now I have to tell it. No. I'm a triathlete, I guess you could say. Okay, so there's my one of my identity affirmation statements. I am a triathlete because that was actually on my vision board. Okay, that's a whole nother conversation. But for a very long time that I wanted to do a triathlon, and this was one of my first ones. And it's I don't know if you're listening out there and you're familiar with triathlons, don't be too impressed. It's not like the great big like has a marathon in it, and they're these sprint triathlons. Okay, so they're like a mini version, a smaller version. So this one that I used to do every year called the Paddle Pant Pedal has a kayak. Oh my gosh, what event? So there's like three events, right? So it goes from kayak, you get out of the kayak, you run, and then you get on the bike. Okay, so the kayak is the first one. It's 2 miles upstream and 2 miles downstream. Well, I had rented my kayak because I was such a novice, and yeah, and I had some vintage bike that I bought off of Craigslist. It was quite the show. And so, unbeknownst to me, this kayak did not have a rudder. Well, a rudder is just this small little piece that keeps you in going in the right direction. And I had no idea what the problem was, but I was like completely zigzagging all the way across the river, like from bank to bank. I was in the trees. I mean, it was so not a linear process. It wasn't even funny, and I was so frustrated. I was in tears. And everyone had like made it to the turnaround point and was on their way back. And the the environment, like the culture of groups that do this, is they're so kind and they're so encouraging. And if it hadn't been for that, I don't even know if I would have finished this thing. But they were like, you could do it, you could do it. But and I think, so many times, and I did, I made it back. I was dead last, except for a guy who was like way over twice my age. And I didn't even want to stop for water because I was like, he is not going to pass me at the very last event. But anyway, that's getting ahead of myself. But the point here, I think, with this story, Jen, is that even though the rudder is like this small little piece that I didn't even know was supposed to be there or that was missing, it made all the difference, and it directed the entire course of I want to say ship, but ships have this too. Ships actually have a rudder and it's kind of like you've probably heard the pilot analogy or the plane analogy, like just one little degree can get it completely off course. And so I think, when we're talking about fear being, our control issues being rooted in fear, it's like it can be invisible and it seems like these little bitty things, but it can really get us off course.
Well, to like our action steps for building courage, I think getting to that point, I think it lends well to be able to parlay your missing rudder thing into trusting, even though there's chaos and you couldn't even control the direction because you had no rudder, right? But we build courage every time we have to trust, even when it's hard, right? Courage is strength in the midst of difficulty.
That's really good. Yes, yes. Okay, so we think about this rudder as being this really small piece, but I think it's a lot of times it's the same way with trust. And so many times it's because of these limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves. But when we surround ourselves with, first of all, these, maybe not first of all, but one of the things, these positive affirmation statements that we're talking about, also with people who believe in us. I mean, that's so many of the things too. So, like I was saying, how all the people were encouraging me. And if it wasn't, for that, and then the choosing, I had to choose with every single stroke. I had to choose to keep going, to keep, paddling, even though I was frustrated. Well, Jen, one of my favorite parts of this story is that I didn't let that 80-year-old man pass me, but or that's not my favorite part. But whenever I got
Glad.
into when I got into the finish line, they had eaten all the food. They were cleaning up and everything. And I was like, wow, like I am so late. Okay, late. Here we go with the theme again, right? And I was probably doing all this self-talk about, yeah, you're always late, whatever theme of my life. This guy comes up to me and he goes, oh, he was like, we're so glad that you're here. Like, finally, and he's like, because we need to give you your trophy and take your picture. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you must have the wrong person, And I have this trophy right over here. It's so funny. I should like give you a picture to put in the podcast. And they hand me this second place trophy. And I'm like, what? You have the wrong girl, And they said, no, 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 no. What you didn't know was that you were actually one of only two females who did the entire event solo. Everyone else was tag team, like they were like three people, one each do, and they were like a relay, excuse me, relay. And I thought, my gosh, and I think to me, that's my favorite trophy. Okay. My kids laugh about it because they say it's the last place, second place trophy. I don't know. They call it something funny. And it's hilarious. But to me, it is this symbol of like not quitting, and like I said with the paddle, like choosing to and that's we I think that was a theme today in our talk was this idea of just choosing, so it's like choosing over and over and over. And then I had to choose one step in front of the other and then one pedal in front of the other. And lo and behold, I got this trophy. And yeah, so I think what happens, Jen, is that whenever we make that choice over and over and over to choose trust, even whenever it's hard, even in the face of fear, in the face of difficulty, and we just gain that courage one step at a time, then we realize in the end that it was all worth it. We can't see it when we're in the middle of it.
Amen. Absolutely. And taking those steps every day, having that strength in the face of difficulty, which is courage, which
Mhm.
isn't something you were
Mhm.
born with. We get it. We get that trophy because of the hardship, right? Choosing
So
to
true.
get through those difficult times and believing that there's something better on the other side. There's so many things, and we'll go into it deeper in other episodes as well. When those hard times try to overtake us, why we can have courage to be confident in our calling and not just given because of the hardship that's in front of us. I feel like whoever rented you that kayak was like punking you because what have a rudder. I'm sorry, but maybe that, I mean, for you to keep going, and I'm just watching, I'm imagining you swerving across this river or the lake or wherever you were. And but the fact that you didn't know that you were doing that solo and not everybody was even choosing that route. That's courageous right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't told that part of the story in a really long time. As a matter of fact, I just shared that on my own podcast, but I had forgotten about the last place, second place trophy.
That's so cool, Lisa. Well, thank you for joining me for this first conversation today. So we want to encourage you, as if you're listening, we want to encourage you to take one step this week to confront a limiting belief that you have. Listeners, think about this. Think about one thing that you've maybe always told yourself, no, that's not me. I'm not that person, or I'm not that brave, or I'm not a leader. And I'm here to tell you, if you're a mother, you're a leader.
Yes.
You have eyes watching you. And please try not to make that feel like extra pressure. Please try to see that as a privilege, because we get to learn, and we get to be molded and shaped by the lives of the humans that we're helping to grow into adults someday. Lisa, thank you for your input into this conversation on courage.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, this has been so great. So our next episode will focus on confidence and what it looks like to choose freedom over perfection. So here at Enough Mom, we are helping you to find the courage to be confident in your calling. Please join us for the next episode. Until then, we'll see you.
So much fun. Thanks.
What an incredible conversation with Lisa today. If her story about that kayak race doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will. She's hilarious. Now, I want to hear from you. What is one limiting belief that you're going to confront this week? Send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at Jennifer Bryant _ and let me know there. I'd love to hear from you, and I promise that I read every single message. And if you found this episode helpful, here's how you can help other mamas to find it. It's super simple. First, just hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching this or listening to this, whatever platform you're on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, wherever you are. Second, if you have 30 seconds, if you can leave a quick rating and review, it seriously helps other moms discover the show. And third, we're talking about confidence and choosing freedom over perfection. You won't want to miss the next episode I have recorded with Lisa Jones in our, not quite a part 2, but it's the second part of the Courage, Confidence, and Calling that we're reviewing together as mothers of teenagers. So we're going to cover a lot of ground in that next episode. You can find all the resources we talked about today in the show notes on the Apple Podcasts, on our website. And if you want to go deeper, join the Enough Mom Collective at jennifer-bryant.com. Remember, Mama, you are not alone in this battle. You have courage, you have confidence, and you have calling because you are already enough. Until next time, thanks for watching.